Let's take a look at your market news now. Asian markets closed mixed, with all eyes fixed forward to the US Fed's announcement on monetary policy later today. Markets are pricing in another 25 basis point cut on economic growth concerns. Japanese stocks closed in the red, with the Nikkei share average ending down 0.2%. Hong Kong continued on a downward streak, the Hang Seng index down 0.13%. On mainland China, stocks ended the day in positive territory, led by gains in the food and beverage sectors. The Shanghai Composite Index firming by 0.25%. Let's go to Wall Street now, which ended higher last night as the impact of weekend attacks on Saudi Arabia's biggest oil refinery faded, and investors awaited a widely expected interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve later today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.1% to 27,108 points, while the S&P 500 gained 0.25 percentage points to 3,005 points. The Nasdaq Composite added 0.4% to close out the day at 8,186 points. Let's get some more on the markets. We cross to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. A very good afternoon to Arabile. Take us through what is moving the markets today. Take us through what is moving the markets today.
Yeah, well, seemingly a lot moving around, right, Nzinga, and apologies for that. The market picture certainly slightly negative as well across the board here, and we're certainly seeing a lot of that filtering through. 1% odd lost according to across the Johannesburg Stock Exchange thus far, so that movement really filtering through, as I said a little bit earlier on, from that Asian market, which seemingly wasn't too happy with how things have fared. Yes, talks will begin, of course, when it comes to the China-US trade negotiations. That begins on Thursday. We will then also have perhaps Donald Trump having come out and said that he sees a deal being clinched when it comes to the trade war. That's before the 2020 election, so perhaps a few months away. We still have to wait before we get some sort of deal on that front. So we'll see how things fare on there. But of course, the US Federal Reserve, as you noted, will perhaps give a bit of an indication as to whether they'll increase or cut interest rates or not. That certainly will bode well for that economy and in terms of boosting and trying to help it. But what does that mean locally? Well, we'll get into that in just a bit. Here are the numbers, though, of how the rest of the globe is pairing up. Certainly a few jitters then coming through from the South African currency as well. Doing better for now ahead of that interest rates decision by the Federal Reserve out in the United States. So we'll certainly see how things fare on that front. But let's get into the conversation now with Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers, who joins us here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to unpack this market movement. Makwe, thank you so much for the time. Negativity coming through on the JSE today. Not unexpected, really, considering that the rest of the globe seems to still have those jitters, whether it be from the oil tanker right through to, of course, talks as well between China and the United States, and even the Fed's policy announcement later today.
And I think the disappointment that we saw as well on Monday, with China didn't delivering on their expectancy that they should be cutting interest rates. They left their one-year rate as is. And remember, so far markets have been moving at the back of central bankers will be coming to the party. And as we've seen last week, with the bazooka that we got from the ECB, so that as well put some negative sentiments adding on those high oil prices, because oil prices, all it says is that if they continue to be at elevated levels, then that's going to be negative for the global economy.
I suppose the fears with regards to that is how much movement and how many levers can you pull all at one time. You perhaps want to leave some of the levers for a little bit later on when things are perhaps a little bit more difficult. The US seemingly today may have a lever of their own, cut interest rates by 25 basis points. They haven't done a back-to-back cut in quite a while, and this will be a really big move for Jerome Powell.
By all means, and I think the expectation is all around 63% that they will cut. But you know what's interesting, that chances are they won't move. I mean, it moved from 7% where people thought that they won't move, but just after a week, it's now sitting at 35%, that probably the reserve by the U.S. Federal Reserve will leave rates as they are. But yes, as you know, it's indicated before that it's going to be data dependent, and so far data coming out of that side, it shows that they might still need a little bit of help, so that they might at least maybe help the consumer, as is the major one, the biggest driver of the economy. So probably they don't disappoint, and then they give us that 25 basis point cut. And like you said, you know, into that will be very positive for the markets.
Yeah. We saw the ECB come out with a major stimulus package then in quantitative easing for the European economy. Do you see a similar sentiment sort of put out here to say in future we may look towards quantitative easing? Because I mean, those kind of sentiments will send a strong signal to the market and how strong.
I don't expect to see any QE coming out of Wall Street, but it will be a disappointment if they don't cut the rate. But yes, remember the ECB, they warned us before their September meeting that, guys, we're going to come with something that is going to even far exceed your expectation, and definitely they delivered on that. So we've never seen any hint so far coming from the U.S. Federal Reserve and even from their regional presidents that they might be looking at quick quantitative easing. It's more a question of the must please at least deliver on that 25 basis point cut. If not, then I think the markets won't be happy.
Yeah, a bit of a spook there for them. On the local front though, do you expect the South African Reserve Bank to cut interest rates? Of course, that happens on Thursday then, so we'll have that discussion as well then tomorrow about them. And considering we had an oil price spike recently, perhaps the sustainability of that not so much so, but it seems that all the factors are pointing towards a hold in interest rates, and certainly our economy would probably do well with a cut.
Definitely, our economy needs the cut, but like they said, and we agree with them, that, you know, just monetary policy, I mean, helping is not going to help our economy. We still need the fiscal policy coming into play. Chances are they won't cut interest rates, but yes, there is that odd chance that they might surprise us with a cut, but chances are they'll leave it as is. And as you said, oil prices, that spike was short-lived because of the report that we got from Saudi that they'll be getting back into normal production in a month, I mean, by the end of this month. And also the rand is helping as well, you know, it's strengthening. So I don't think we've got any inflationary issues currently, given that the rand has been doing what it's been doing so far. So that odd chance is still there that they might surprise us.
I certainly hope that the odd chance comes true, but we'll certainly see what happens. There's Lesetja Kganyago and the MPC wrap up their meeting tomorrow. Resilience, as you mentioned, in South Africa's currency, 1463 now against that US dollar. It had weakened to around 1470, but it seems to stay strong no matter what the case is. Maybe not so much just South African issues, but certainly it is good for us right now. It certainly does, as you said, no inflationary issues on this front.
Yeah, and remember, you know, the de-escalation when it comes to the trade tension, it's helping as well. But we had a very good GDP number, and also Moody, when you read between the lines, that's saying come the 1st of November, they're not going to downgrade us unless if we become very silly and do what is expected of us. So that as well, I think, is helping the rand, that come the 1st of November, we're still on the safe side when it comes to our rating. And then also we're showing some efforts that we are trying to do something to lift the economy. So I think it's more of that the issue about Moody's and the good GDP number that we just got.
Yeah. Very quickly, just to get you one equity news story very quickly as well. SABC officially leaves the top 40 as of next week, Monday, because of Process, which is, of course, the split-off subsidiary from Naspers. How big a deal does that really change? Does that really change things? I mean, around 25 billion odd in terms of market value for SABC, and of course, Process comes in with 1.9 trillion rand. That's an absolute massive stake there.
It does, because other mandates, they will tell you that we're only buying the top 40. So unfortunately, you have to sell your SABCs. So I think that's the only effect, and hence you are seeing SABC trading as low as it's at 4%. Because if you are mandate is I'm buying the top 40, then unfortunately, if you're holding SABC, then you just have to sell it.
Is that price going even lower than that? Does it go below 40 rand very soon?
Chances are, but that will now just be the question of the fundamentals of the company. But so far, SABC has been doing well, you know, with their business, especially the European business. So we don't see it going below 40, unless if something fundamental happened to the company.
Okay.
There we are, it's at 42.
Well, exactly. So it's staying there and thereabouts. We'll see how things fare. Markwe, thank you so much. Really appreciate it there. Yeah, quite interesting to note that, yes, indeed, the subsidiary of Naspers there, the internet subsidiary of Naspers, that's Process, does, of course, have a secondary listing on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and that will effectively come into fruition next week. Of course, it did have its Amsterdam listing just last week, Wednesday, so that comes into the local bourse as well. 1.9 trillion rand in terms of valuation. That's absolutely massive. And, of course, Naspers then sitting in top place still in a very, very good position. So how does the market fare? Well, for now, in red. Green, however, for the rand. What does the Fed decision do to that currency? A little later on, we'll certainly see, and we'll have a chat about that tomorrow as well, when that interest rates decision locally is also expected. For me, that's where the buck stops. My colleague Nzinga joins you right after this.